OK, we have a couple of questions here on the same topic. So the first one is from Fabian, who asks, is it wise for Keir Starmer to signal to the British people that he intends for the UK to become part of the EU through the back door? I'm not sure he did say that, but anyway, half of the electorate will not be happy. The second one is from YouTube viewer Welcome the Revolution, who asks, when can we expect Labour to produce an impact assessment of Brexit?
Well, it wouldn't be wise because he hasn't done it and he won't do it. He's not going back into the EU or the single market or the customs union. And now there are many people listening and some people in the room perhaps who wish he would, but he won't. He's been absolutely crystal clear on that. And indeed, when it came to the much, as it were, less provocative things like rights for young workers to move across, he's been pretty cold on that as well. And I think he's, this very, very delicate game that he's playing of trying to persuade Scholz, who's under huge pressure, of course, internally at the moment, and Macron, etc., to allow specific deals on cross-border goods and to, limit the really, really onerous new passport requirements that are coming in October and all of that. Without giving much away. It's a very, very difficult. His stock in Europe is very high, but this naive belief in some people before the election that because it was a Labour government, because they weren't beastly Brexiteers, because they said they loved Europe and they had holiday homes in Provence, it would be easy. Forget it. The EU will always negotiate very, very toughly and still is.
But what do you think a reset, which is the word that Labour have used, can possibly look like then? So, if all those things are excluded?
Sectoral dynamic alignment, he said excitedly.
Very sexy.
No, which only means, you take chemicals or you take pharmaceuticals or whatever it is, and you do a specific deal, right, which means that on pharmaceuticals, we will carry on changing our regulations in lockstep with the EU. And in return for that, there will be no tariffs, no hesitations at the border. And you do that over a series of very important but individual sectors, whatever it might be, advanced engineering and so on. And after a while, it looks a bit like being inside the single market without ever having done that. In other words, you do it finger by finger by finger, and suddenly you've got a fist. I don't think it's going to work that way. I think the EU sees too much of it as cherry picking, and I think it's easier to explain than it is to actually negotiate. But that, I think, is as much of a plan as they have at the moment.
I have thought for a while that closer alignment with the EU means never mentioning Brexit, rejoining, single market, customs union, and those kind of really provocative phrases. It means making it as boring as possible. As Andrew said, sort of referring to things like a sectoral agreement under paragraph 2.1b of the regulatory framework. Please see footnote X. Like it means
no one reads it.
So that nobody reads it, and so it's like, oh, this is just a boring trade thing. We don't have to worry about that. It's not, customs union, which people feel really strongly about. But there are limits to it. Also, it takes a really long time, and it's not ever going to be as comprehensive as going back to where we were. But I think there is real fatigue among all the parties, actually. We spent 8 years having this argument, and there were a lot of other debates and policy issues that we didn't look at enough because all the airtime was on this. And I don't think there's any appetite within Labour to restart at all. So in answer to the person's question who says, when are we going to get an impact assessment? I just don't think Labour want to reopen any of that.
But also, is it worth doing an impact assessment? I mean, it's happened. There's many other problems to solve that are more pressing, arguably.
What matters most, what matters only really in all of this is the extent to which we get inward investment and the first green shoots of growth under Rachel Reeves. Everything hangs on that. And I think they'll be hoping that a series of announcements by big private sector companies, by big sovereign wealth funds about investing in this or that aspect of the UK over the next 6 months, as it were, that is the impact assessment. Do you know what? The impact is we're doing quite well at the moment anyway.